wouldn't have called out to her. It's what she wants.
Undertone is a brand new horror film that hit theaters this weekend. The film is directed by Ian Twisson, and there are two big things that people were saying after the initial screenings of this movie. One, that the audio in this movie is a nightmare in and of itself, that the audio sound mixing of this movie would creep under your skin while you watch the film and would just absolutely creep you out. It would just get you in the mood for this horror film. And the other big thing that was said was that this is one of the scariest movies ever made, and that the end of this film will absolutely shock you, the viewer. And I can confirm to you guys, after watching this movie, that one of those things is accurate. So let's do the review for Undertone.
Here we go.
That is one big pile of shit.
No, I shot him. Bullets in the fall killed him.
So Undertone opens up inside of a house that you, the viewer, will not leave for the duration of the film. And within this house, there's a girl named Evie, played by Nina Curie, and Evie has moved back into that house. You find out it's her mother's house. She's moved in there to take care of her mother, who is slowly dying. You find out in the opening moments of the movie that Evie's mother has not eaten anything for a couple of weeks. She's laying in bed, seemingly comatose, just breathing, not getting out of bed at all. And the last thing that Evie has of her mother's voice at this point is a voicemail that she left where she said, "I'll pray for you." But while that's going on, you also find out that Evie runs a podcast, and not just any podcast, but a horror podcast. She wants to find real life supernatural things that happen around the world, and she wants to know if they're real. And while she's alone in this house recording this podcast, she's not alone on her podcast, because one of her best friends, Justin, who definitely lives in a very different time zone, although they never really say where he lives. Justin is played by Adam DeMarco, and throughout this film you will only hear his voice when they are recording a podcast together. But Justin serves as the guy on the podcast that believes in these supernatural stories that they find around the world, the ones that they talk about. He believes there's a supernatural element to things. However, Evie is very skeptical. She believes in logic, in reason. She doesn't believe in the supernatural. And that leads us to the first episode that we, the viewers, are introduced to in this film, because they're covering some audio files that were anonymously sent to Justin. There are 10 of them, and within these mysterious audio files that both Justin and Evie are listening to on their podcast is a couple named Reed and Jessa. And you find out that Jessa is having some weird things happen to her at night, and so they started these audio recordings to record Jessa at night to find out what was going on. But of course, as Justin and Evie listen to more and more of these audio recordings, well, strange and deadly, horrific things start to happen around Evie in her home. It starts as maybe some sounds that she hears, or maybe some sounds that you, the viewer, hear. Again, this movie is very audio-based for you, the viewer or listener, and so all of these strange little things start to happen, whether they're sounds coming from upstairs, lights randomly turning on, and then, of course, it leads to something very scary for Evie towards the end of this film. And that is the best possible synopsis that I can give you without spoiling anything. I don't want to say any more because there are a few other things, but I just don't want to get into them in a non-spoiler review. That said, if you are interested in checking this movie out, it is currently playing in theaters, and I would definitely recommend listening to it in a theater that has great surround sound. That's how I watched this movie, and I was very happy with the audio presentation. More on that in my positives and negatives. But before getting into my positives and negatives for this movie, if this is the first time you found my channel, well, I would love for you guys to hit that subscribe button, check out all the different content that I have, whether you like movie reviews, Blu-ray talk, or even ranked list videos. I've got a little bit of everything on my channel, and I'd love for you guys to check it out. All right, let's get into my positives and my negatives for Undertone. So right off the bat, my first positive for this movie has to be the audio and sound mixing. That is the big draw for this film. It's the scariest movie you'll ever hear. That's what the trailers kept saying. That's what critics keep saying online. And I will echo those thoughts because this audio presentation is fantastic. I don't know if I've ever been part of a movie like this before where the audio is the best thing coming out of it. The audio does find a way to sort of creep under your skin during the film. The audio in and of itself gives you, the viewer, this reason to lock into the film, to pay attention to every little sound, every little detail, all the things going on around this main character of Evie. And so I thought the sound mixing, not only was it great, but this was a one-of-a-kind experience. I've never experienced something like this through the audio of a film. But it's not just the audio in this movie that worked for me. The camera work was also really well done. Like I said earlier, you will be in this house as the viewer for the duration of the film, and I feel like that could get kind of boring. Maybe you want to see something different. Even when our main character leaves the house, you, the viewer, don't leave. And it's not always clear how much time has passed when the main character leaves the house. You just know you were in there for some creepy stuff to happen. Like I said, that could have gotten kind of boring after a while, but they find a way to move the camera in ways that are really fun for you to watch. For instance, when she's shooting this podcast, it's just her in front of a podcast setup, whether that's a microphone, a laptop. She's talking to her friend Justin, and the camera will be behind her, sort of watching her throughout this film. And as it passes her, you expect, as the viewer, to go into the next room. But somehow the room connects once again to her. And the first time that happened in the movie, I was like, oh, that was a cool camera trick that they did. I like that. But then you find out that it's just constantly doing that throughout the movie. The camera will move a certain way, and then you think you're leaving the room. Maybe you're going to see something scary in a different corner, but it's just the same room starting over again. And what that gave me the impression of as the viewer was that this entity, this thing that's watching Evie throughout the film, is solely focused on her. Maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much. Maybe it was just a cool camera trick they were doing, but that's what I got out of it. I got out of it that this thing, this entity that's watching Evie throughout this film, is solely focused on her. And again, that was portrayed to me, the viewer, by the way that they used the camera work in this film. As the camera would pass Evie, you would expect to see the next thing, but this thing is so locked in on her that it automatically starts over seeing her again. It's like this loop of just watching Evie over and over. And again, the way they use the camera in this film was very well done. There's some other tricks they have up their sleeve, some things that happen in the background of some scenes, but there's not too many of those. Visually, this movie isn't as impressive as it is with the audio, with the sound mixing, but just that camera trick in and of itself kind of made you, the viewer, feel like you were looking at her through something else's eyes. And I feel like I have to give the movie props for that because along with the audio, I thought the camera work was done really well in this movie. And that leads me to my final positive of this film, and that is the incredible acting that's done by Nina Kiri. Along with the camera work keeping you in the same house, along with the audio mixing sort of locking you into the story, I feel like her performance was key to making this whole thing work because she's really the only person you see acting throughout this film. Yes, you see her mother a couple of times. Most of the time, though, she's just knocked out in her bed. I won't get into any more specifics than that, but for the most part in this film, you're following Evie and you're watching her act throughout this movie, and I feel like she gives a great performance. I felt like she goes from this skeptic, someone who doesn't really believe, to this horrified character by the end of the film, and it naturally progresses with the slow burn of the movie. The movie is a very slow burn film, but again, I feel like it locks you in ways that other slow burn films don't do. And we'll get to my negatives about the ending of this film here in a second, but as you're watching Evie go along this ride, go through this film, you see her slowly descend into some sort of madness, just being absolutely driven out of her mind by the sounds that you, the viewer, are also experiencing in this film. And I think she did a great job with that. And that does it for my positives. Let's get over to my negatives. And my first negative for this movie, since we were just talking about it, is going to be that ending. Listen, this is not the most shocking ending of all time, and I do not want to overhype the ending of this film like so many other people have done. I didn't really like the ending of this film. It didn't really work for me because this movie is a slow burn, slow build film. And as you're doing a slow burn film, you need a payoff at the end, something that makes you, the viewer, rewarded for giving the movie your time, for trusting in that that process, that very slow burn, that very slow build. A movie like Hereditary comes to mind, very slow to build the film for you, but you get to that ending and it is just balls to the wall, some crazy visuals that you see, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But in this movie, you get to the last moments of this film, you're like, all right, here comes that ending. We've been building up to it. And it just sort of ends. They just sort of hit you with a couple visuals, nothing crazy, and then it just ends. And I was really let down by that ending. Now, was part of that letdown because so many people had hyped up the movie for me when it gets to the end? Maybe. Maybe my expectations were too high. Maybe I watch this movie again in the future. Maybe I show it to some people knowing the ending's not going to be that good and it won't disappoint me as much. But as of right now, after seeing this movie once, yeah, that ending left me with a lot of questions. And if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you know I don't need all of the answers to my questions at the end of a film, but I need some of them. And this movie didn't really provide any. It just ramped up the audio, it ramped up the sound mixing, which I thought was good. It ramped up how horrified the girl felt in the film, but it didn't answer any of the questions. I still felt like they left out so much of the end of the story, almost like they ran out of a budget at the end. They were like, all right, we did all of these cool things, and we got to the end, and just change the wallpaper and show her very scared face. That'll do it. And it just didn't do it for me personally, so it has to be a negative. And that brings me to my other negative, which is also story-based. We already talked about the ending. We have to talk about the overall story in this movie, because to me, the overall story in this movie was something we've seen many times before. It did feel kind of weak. Now, don't get it twisted. The audio is fantastic, and it did feel very fresh and very unique to have a movie like this, but the story itself didn't feel fresh. The story itself didn't feel unique. And what I mean by that is you've got this story that we've kind of seen many times before. Somebody is listening to these things that are unlocking this great evil, and this great evil is coming for you, and it's just the ABCs of horror movies and horror themes that we've seen in the past. While there were elements in the story I enjoyed, it did feel weak. It did feel like I saw something like that before. And when you have that slow burn, that slow build for a story that feels very old, a story that feels like I've seen it many times, and you get to the ending like my previous negative, and the ending is weak, well, that makes the overall story of this film very weak and definitely a negative. Overall, I had a fantastic time with the presentation of the audio and sound mixing in this film. Like I said earlier, the camera worked for me. The acting from Nina worked for me. I thought there were some great things overall in this movie, and it is one that I would highly recommend if you're a fan of horror films. If you like going to a theater and being absolutely creeped out by a horror movie, then I would say put this on your list to see in theaters. See it in a theater that has great surround sound, because that audio really will draw you in, lock you in, and it is a great presentation of how audio can scare you, the viewer, more than what you're looking at. But on the other side of things, if you're not a big fan of horror, I don't think this movie will do it for you, because there's a lot of tropes and a lot of things that we've seen many times in the past. But as always, guys, those are just my opinions, because that's my review for Undertone. Have you guys had a chance to see this film yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know where we agree, where we disagree, what you liked about the movie, what you didn't like about the movie. Let me know all of that stuff. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of my Undertone review. I had a really fun time making this review, had a great time with the movie in general, and it is one that I will watch again in the future, probably down here with my surround sound. Would be fun to have a crowd for it, just to see how other people react to some of the things, some of the pop-ups that happen in this film. It's like jump scares, but with sound. I probably should have put that in the full review, but that's how I feel about this movie. But that said, if you did like watching this video and you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my horror movie reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2026 movie reviews right there.